staying out this long, and coming to my TED Talk, of course. But before I started my TED Talk, I actually wanted to talk a little bit about myself before my TED Talk. So, as any business major in here can tell me, one of the great pleasures about being a part of Marshall is getting your elevator pitch down. Getting that 30-second pitch down just in case you meet Donald Trump or President Nikias in an elevator in the hallway, and you really, really need that job. And so after 4 years of my education, I can proudly say I have it down flat. So hi, my name is Eric. I'm a senior at the University of Southern California studying international business. From my work at Apple and NBC Universal, I'm confident in my skills in interacting with clients, building business models, and projecting growth. But the interesting thing about these elevator pitches is they're slightly artificial and highly refined. They're like a photo that's gotten through Photoshop, and you find that just right Instagram filter that makes a trash can look like a piece of modern art. And so that's the issue that I've had, because coming in as a freshman and stepping into my first class at USC and telling me that I need to create these concepts and realities of myself that I can present to other people, that was scary. Because if I'm to be whole, I must have a dark side too. And so that's what I'm going to talk about for my TED Talk. But beforehand, I actually want to start with, sorry, there's a lot of laptops up here. My baby picture. So this is in elementary school. A lot of people look at this and they're like, wow, you're a Trojan from birth. All I look at when I see this is, I really like the color red, and I graduated elementary school. So just so that you guys know. But going back to my freshman year, I was definitely someone that went with the flow. And for someone that went with the flow, I went where the winds took me. And so for my freshman summer, I ended up booking a one-way ticket to Dubai, courtesy of USC, thank you. And I actually ended up in Okinawa, Japan. So O in Japanese means large, and Funado means harbor. And so this is actually the city flag, a very appropriate symbol. But a big harbor in the northeastern coastline of Japan in March 2011 wasn't in the best circumstance. So going into it, Ofunado was actually a city affected by the March 2011 Tohoku earthquake. And when I arrived there, this is the setting that I came into. And so as a proponent of travel, there are a lot of physical experiences and physical knowledge that I took from this. One being, wow, look at these spaces, and look how much trauma these spaces can take. So while I was there, I was actually a collector of debris, or I threw away debris, I guess. And every once in a while, in this debris, you would find these sentimental objects. For me, it was a Hello Kitty doll that I found in the house. And that literally was the first time I saw a physical manifestation of hope. And I learned a lot from it. Because in this wood, in this metal, you find something that actually used to represent someone's home. And it actually had sentimental value. Another thing I learned is my primary job here was a fish cleaner. And hopefully no one has fish after this. But being in a large harbor, it had a lot of fish factories around it. And so when the tsunami came in March, the factories were abandoned for about 4 months. And so all that fish and squid inventory was there in the hot Japanese sun throughout the summer, and they needed somebody to clean it. So this is actually a colleague of mine. We would actually go through the fish, pull out all the plastic, because these things were being ready to ship, because nobody expected the tsunami. Finally, another thing I learned was uncomfortableness. A lot of uncomfortableness physically. As you can tell, that's my hand. Very pretty hand. And I had a dirt line. And I wasn't able to shower, and so it would just kind of build up, and I would have my gloves over it. This was my bed. I found one of these outside, so I picked it up and brought it back in. And eventually I upgraded, which was great, to this. It was nice because at night I didn't squeak around so much. But ultimately, looking back on this trip, these physical experiences that I learned was nothing compared to what I learned from emotional others. So I learned a lot in terms of, wow, I can have an impact in the environment that I'm doing. But the greatest trip of all was one day we were actually invited to a Buddhist temple in Takata, which is a city right next to Okinawa. And it was great. It was a space that didn't have this trauma. And so we gathered together and we had a nice little barbecue. And this is actually where I learned the most. As you can tell, I'm pretty happy. I'm very different from my freshman year as well. But right next to me was a woman, and her name was Morioka. And so when I first met Morioka, she was great. She was happy, we were fine, we drank a little, which was really exciting being 19 at the time, so free alcohol is always a plus. But when we talked a little bit more, she told me she lost her family. She lost her home, and she lost her husband. And throughout the night, we would just talk about this grief, and we would talk about this trauma. And there was so much to learn from her. But the best thing, or one of the most significant things that I remember from that conversation, was that she says, I don't know what I want, but I know it's not this. And so for me, that was revolutionary. For some of you here, it could just be words on a page or words on a PowerPoint. But this showed me that life isn't a binary. That I can both be not knowing what I want, but that in itself is knowing. And that really calmed me down, especially my freshman year. So, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I know I had to experience new things. So I just looked out for a little bit. And I came back for my sophomore year. And luckily I came back, and I met the best friends of my life. And I was very, very privileged, and I was very lucky to meet my roommate and my best friend, Laura. And together we went to Peru, and we actually worked in the slums of Pampeluna. So the slums of Pampeluna are just outside of Lima. And if you ever go there, it's probably one of the most beautifully devastating experiences of your life. There are vast, they call them shacks, vast number of shacks throughout this cliffside that people live in. And they number in, I don't even know, I want to say the thousands. And so this is a typical shack. There's no running water, there's no electricity, but most of all, there are no amenities in terms of education is really difficult to receive. And healthcare is non-existent. But one of the things I did learn was from others. And so I was very privileged. I met these kids, and I mean, first of all, I figured out I love kids. I was initially really, really scared of them, to be honest, but they were so warm. They were so kind. Nothing that I've really experienced. And so I played with them, and we ran around, and we did piggyback rides. And eventually I met, her name's Maria. I met Maria, and she showed me her house. And similarly, she had no running water and no electricity. And she only went to school, I think, 3 days, just because she couldn't walk that far, so it was every other day. And eventually we, got to talking again, as much as a 9-year-old talks. She talked about everything. And then she told me about her dreams. And she told me she wanted to be an astronaut. And first of all, coming from my background in the US and having the amount of privilege and opportunities that I have, an astronaut was still kind of a little too far for me. And so I didn't know what to say. But she really taught me to dream in uncomfortable places. And this is something that I take in even today, both physically and metaphorically. To really think about the future and think about those things that make me uncomfortable, even when I know I'm not ready. But also to understand that physically sleeping in uncomfortable places will make you dream better. So just a tip for tonight. And finally, coming back for my junior and senior year. A lot of you already know that I studied abroad junior year. And so my junior and senior year has been this manifestation of really not knowing where I am and being okay with it, but dreaming far and hoping it gets me places. And so I look back in the past 2 years and everything I've seen and everything I've done. This is actually the Westboro Baptist Church, which I decided to work on with my best friend. And as you know, this is me in Oktoberfest. And so, this is me and just passed out.
Later Hosen story.
Can you tell your later Hosen story?
Another day. One-on-one.
No.
But going through all of these experiences with a lot of people and a lot of different places really taught me to explore new places. And so, if there's anything that I want you to get from this TED Talk, it's just to explore, both within yourself and with others. Because ultimately, leadership for others comes from leadership of the self. So, thanks for barely listening.